Hello everyone, my name is Jonathan Sherwood, and this week I'm showing you the first milestone, which is week 1 of work on my Warcraft 3 level, which is a campaign called the Fires of Hearthwood. Week 1 was dedicated to just learning the engine because there's a fairly steep learning curve, but I also wanted to make sure that I had the terrain set up so that I had a basic guideline of where I would be putting the city and where I would be putting enemies. I also spent a little bit of time learning how to program fights and victory conditions and lose conditions and things like that. But as you can see, for now I want it to just be that the player isn't able to go too terribly far to the south, but I have enough for them to look at. So that it does feel like it's a fully lived-in location, regardless of the fact that you have no reason to be down here. I may add a box or two, but actually the city's walls are going to be extending so far down this direction, you almost will never have a chance to even get down to this part to see it in the first place. I also was learning how to use triggers and events for things such as the moment the map loads in, the player turns blue. One issue that the engine is having is that there doesn't seem to be a play button in Warcraft Reforged. Supposedly that's something that they're going to be working on, which means all of this has to be demonstrated via a in-engine play button, so a lot of the functionality doesn't quite work properly. For example, the names don't update as it should be. I am technically playing as the editor, I'm not playing as player 1. So a few cheats had to be implemented where the moment the map loads in, you turn blue and it changes your name, things like that. But unless I learn otherwise, it seems like some of the functionality of this is going to be a little limited. But it should be good enough for what it needs to be because, again, when you start the engine with a bunch of different triggers, it does mostly what you need it to anyway. So I've also implemented a brief fight scene. And the fight scene will lead to a victory or defeat condition. Obviously, this hero is not the final one I'm going to be using. I'm just using a lot of placeholders, but I wanted to make sure that I had a overall feel of what I was going to be doing in the long run. And then you lose. I had actually given it a brief overview. I opened some of the Blizzard campaign levels to see how they handled things, and for example, every hero needs to have a starting point, but it doesn't matter where that is, so I placed mine much like they did, just out in the forest. It doesn't actually have to interact with anything, it just has to exist so that it can register that a player is there in the first place. For example, it's also showing that a building should be spawning here, but all you have to do is deactivate that in the editor. This already has 5 different scripts just in order to make things work in the first place. And while it was a little difficult to learn, it is fairly intuitive once you get enough of the pieces working. But also, for things like this, you can't just spawn an open door. You have to open or spawn a door, and then on the initialization, that's when it opens. So for a very brief second, if you're close enough, you actually see it explode outward. But since the player spawns here with the camera zoomed in, you can't see anything. But for the most part, this is all I wanted to get done. I'm showing off what I think I can do with props and with terraforming and things like that. It's actually very clever that you can add everything. You can add a waterfall, you can add the bubbles. There's occasional fish coming in through here. I want the darkness to stop roughly here so that if you can see far enough, which you shouldn't be able to, it looks like the forest is filled. And if you move too far to the north, there's also another forest that blocks your path, which is just enough to convince the player, okay, well I can't go north, I can't go south, time to go through the gate. And again, the rest of the buildings will be here to actually fill in for the rest. This is just placeholders, so I know the size I want to give it and also what I want the ground to look like. So anywhere that's not populated by people will have grass, and then it'll be dirt and dirt roads inside the city. So that's Milestone 1. Look forward to seeing the rest. Thank you for watching.